social transition. We are very, very happy to be welcoming Nemo, Eliana, and others that have gone from the delegation of the Eco-Social Pact of the South. It's really, we're very honored to have comrades come from different places of the Global South to come to speak to movements in the UK to show us the different processes that they've been in, to share experiences of the work that they've been doing that have always been really important for the work that we do here. My name is Tatiana. I'm part of an organization called Tipping Point, which is one of the co-organizers of today's event. And before we start, I just wanted to go over some logistical facts. So there is a toilet at the back of this room, but I think the code might not be working. So if you come to talk to one of us, we'll give you a code and show you where to go.
£1.
No. But also I just wanted to kind of like introduce you to this building. Anyone who hadn't been here in the Pelican House before? All of you have been here. Oh, amazing. So I don't have to explain that. Amazing. Well, this is a community hub. There are lots of organizations from the movement that are based here and meet here as well. So yeah, we're very, very happy, very glad to be able to have this event here in the Pelican House. I also, yeah, like very grateful to the Rosa Luxembourg London office that has been really instrumental in helping us organize. And before we continue, I just wanted to invite you all to speak to the person next to you, maybe someone that you don't know. You can ask their name, you can share where you traveled from, maybe one of the reasons that brought you to this event, just so that we can start breaking the ice a bit. We want this session to be interactive. We're going to be in conversation, asking the speakers some questions. I think it would be nice if you can also start with yourself. So yeah, if you can turn around and talk to someone that you don't know. For a few minutes.
Right, everyone. We'd like to come back. And if we could just ask for your attention once more. I hope you've had a chance to say hello to each other and to greet each other this lovely Friday afternoon. I think I'm also thankful that you chose to spend a warm Friday afternoon in this particular space. And we hope that, like us, you feel part of the reason why that's important is because of the depth, the nature, the need for conversations such as this one. And as Tati mentioned, this particular conversation, this dialogue, is based around a manifesto called the Manifesto for an Ecosocial Energy Transition. And a delegation from the Global South, including Nemo and Liliana here, who I'll introduce just a little bit, but also included comrades, compas from Fiji, from Brazil, from across the Global South, I suppose. And their mission, their intention, their purpose for coming to Europe was to lay down an agenda, lay down a series of demands that we'll hear about, lay down a series of critical challenges to the way in which Europe, the global north, and the UK is envisioning the just transition, envisioning the energy transition, and where those failings are. And so it's really important that we kind of bring this cycle of activities in Europe. The Compass have been in Brussels, they've been in Berlin, and now they're finishing in London. And use this moment as a moment to reflect on what we've learned, as a moment to also celebrate the openings and as a space of dialogue with UK movements. I won't say much about the moment that we're in, because I think everyone here understands viscerally. But I guess one interesting reflection that came out of a workshop that we had yesterday with the delegation, which was a beautiful space for exchange and for asking difficult questions, was that we are seeing in the UK, right, the crackdown on our right to protest, on our right to dissent. We're seeing the devastating impacts of the cost of living crisis. We are seeing the South and the North in many ways. And it's interesting how these moments often make us look inward. And so what then of the conversation about the need for global justice, the need to for internationalism, the need to think critically about the way in which we need to decarbonize and which we need to transition away from fossil fuels, and how our visions for that particular transition have a deep impact in the way in which extraction, commodification of resources, of labor happens in the global south. Anyway, I won't say much more than that, but just to say that we want to very much continue the dialogue that's been happening over the last few days, continue the dialogue that we started yesterday in the beautiful workshop that we had, and make it a space to continue asking challenging questions, a space to continue recognizing each other in our difference, and a space to really critically think about what we mean when we say just transition, and how we put that into dialogue with other visions for what that transition could look like. And so I'll just introduce the panel very quickly. We'll start with Nemo, who is next to Taki. Nemo Basi, architect, environmental activist, poet, author. He's director of Health of Mother Earth Foundation in Nigeria. And Nemo, to take it the wrong way, is very much a father of the environmental justice movement now. He holds deep wisdom, he holds so much experience, so much beautiful resistance. And so we're very honored that he's here. And then next to Nemo, we have Liliana Huitrago. Liliana Huitrago is a dear friend, a compañera, we're really grateful to have with us. Liliana works with the Venezuelan Observatory for Political Ecology, and is also part of the Ecosocial Pact of the South. And the observatory is perhaps the leading critical voice in terms of political ecology, ecological justice in Venezuela, which we all know about in terms of its challenges and often overlook the social, environmental, and ecological impacts. And so we have been at it for the last however many years, and doing a really important, brave job of having this conversation in a difficult place like Venezuela. And then to my right is
never to your right.
Next to me is dear friend, comrade, also my boss. We won't say that until it gets out. Asad Raymond, who I'm sure a lot of you know already. Yeah, been a leading voice in the climate justice movement, has really pushed a lot of us to think critically about what we mean when we say climate justice, and being a true mentor to so many of us about the intersections at a particular moment, and most critically, how we come together to challenge it by holding power. So that's who we are. I think we're going to get started.
Introduce yourself.
Oh, yes. I am Sebastián Ordóñez. I am with Born Once, and work with climate justice and extractivism. It's great to be here too.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Federica. So I just wanted to sort of like share a little bit about the format of today. So we are going to be asking Liliana, Nemo, and Asad a few questions, and then we'll open up the space for questions from all of you, and then we'll have a few drinks at the end of the event. But yeah, I just wanted to ask you, Nemo, and Liliana, to start with, for those that don't know and haven't read the manifesto, if you can share with everybody what are the key elements of that manifesto, and in relation to its vision for an eco-social transition, just so that people can sort of like know. And also, if you want to share maybe a little bit about the process that took place within all of you, the collective, and how that came about. Maybe we can start with that, and we'll move on to you, Asad, just to connect it to some of the work that has been happening here in the global north in the UK in connection to conference also in the south.
Thank you for being here. Thank you to the Foil World, our friends. And well, it's been 3 days of full job and meetings and many conversations we have had here in Europe to bring our voices, which we think anyway they are collective because of the work we are doing as organizations and as alliances there in the global south. And the manifesto, South Manifesto for Just Energy Transition. It's part of a process that started 20 years ago in a way, because we decided to join in this Pacto Ecosocial and Intercultural del Sur, the Ecosocial and Intercultural Pact of the South. But we were working there in the different countries of the South for many years. Many of our people from Pacto been working on ecological, political ecology and ecological transitions for a long time ago, let's say. We joined it, we decided that we really are facing this different crisis. It's not just writing crisis, it's a very different poly crisis. Because it's the overlap of different crises and how we could face the situation. Right now, when we see that transition, what we call, we think that there is a green transition, colonial transition, and for what we were working for here, there is a social transformation, ecological transformation of the way we live and relate to nature, and dialogue with diversity in the global south. So during this transition, when it is really colonialism, and we decided that we wanted to join to discuss, debate, and we decided to open some dialogues, spaces for talking about this with first in Latin America, then we opened this to Asia, Africa, etc. And we decided to write this manifesto. And in a way, it is part of what it tries to summarize something which is very difficult, but how do we see a civilizatory change? Saying that is very difficult, but it really is so abstract, but at the same time, it's because we notice that sometimes it is too energy centered, too decarbonization centered, and so on. And the discussion about transition funds, those are so very important aspects for sure. Many of us, we are working on that, in fact, in our movements, but we needed to keep this approach social, intercultural, anti-patriarchal, and decolonial perspective. So we decided to start some dialogues, and of course, it's for energy transition, but thinking about energy as a relational thing, not just electricity for corporations and industry and supply, or for consumption in the way we are doing right now. So we decided to go beyond, taking what we have learned from different communities there in South America and put it into words. You know. And we started to discuss and we noticed many processes, and we knew that, but just wanted to see how to put it all together. How, for example, what they call critical materials iron, and how lithium extraction is happening right now in the different parts of the south. And for example, discussing how coal solutions are being installed on the territories. Why do we say they are false, and what is a real solution? So those were the discussions we were having, or let's see, 3-4 dialogues we were having, and 4 meetings, etc. And then we have this manifesto, which is an action call for governments, for the society, for our sisters and brothers all around the world. And it's for South. It's the South perspective, but we decided to come here because there will be a transition without altogether, without North movements and of course a real damage with different scales and spaces. I will stop here to give the word to Nemo and to continue this. Harry, we can continue with that later.
Thank you so much for laying the foundation so clearly. And thank you all for coming out this beautiful Friday afternoon. When I come to Europe, I never know when afternoon starts and when evening starts and when night falls. Because of the everybody night, the sun is still out. Anyway, yes, we've been working together on various platforms for a very long time. And we thought it was good to consolidate the relationships by producing this manifesto, which is, as we call it, manifesto for the Global South, but for the people of the Global South. But we find that it also has big resonance for people in the global North. And it's a manifesto that we should all pick up and work with and understand. The manifesto is like a series of bullet points. So each of the points requires elaboration, more conversations, and it requires to be contextualized. And then we believe policymakers need to understand what the issues are and not just work on what corporations want. Because one of the first things that manifesto lays out is the fact that now the transition is on everybody's lips. Everybody's talking about the transition. But what kind of transition? What kind of transition are we doing? If we use this space to send mega projects by transnational corporations, big corporations, then we're going to invest, we're going to have this green capitalism. They're going to dig in and replicate sacrificial zones that we already have across the global south. I don't need to have any in the global north, but we have it all over, from the colonial times to current time, ongoing time, even in this period of transition. We're seeing that ongoing. So the manifesto calls out clearly that we have to, as Lina said, we have to reject false solutions. And in fact, we should also question whether we need to call them solutions in the first place. Because if a thing is false, is it real? Or do you have to say it's a false something? So language is critical for us, because that builds up the imaginaries, and imaginaries build up the action. And so understanding what our issues are, understanding what we're fighting against, reclaiming the language from that has been corrupted by corporate speculations. We really need to reclaim the language and reassert ourselves and explain things to ourselves. And one of the things that the manifesto also promotes is that, I mean, these are not new things. Things we've been campaigning about, we put it in black and white so that we could openly debate and see what come to an agreement. The issue of ecological debt. I mean, Liliana mentioned that there are many kinds of debts, social debt, gender debt, climate debt, but the ecological debt stands out very clearly because the global south has been the storehouse for exploitation. But many people think of Africa, for example, as a limitless zone of exploitation. In other words, you can take as much as you want, you're never going to exhaust it. And I like to say, sometimes people prefer Africa, would prefer Africa without Africa. Because you just go there and get what you want, and that would be it. So we believe that kind of reckless exploitation to slavery, colonialism, neocolonialism, is so bad that we can't repair the damage just by platitudes or by denying and say, oh, we're sorry. Being sorry will not repair the damage. And so it's time to ask for payment of the ecological debts for the massive damage that has been done. I'm sure you all are talking about the loss and damage as the biggest outcome of COP27. And maybe that will be a big debate at COP28. And then eventually some coins may trickle into the box for loss and damage. But if the climate debt were to be paid, the ecological debt will be paid, we'll not talk about climate finance, we'll not talk about loss and damage, because this will take care of that problem. The real damage is deeper than what could be paid for in loss and damage. That's at least my thinking. So that is one. Then the other thing is the cancellation of debts. You know how that thing, you have bills on. Many countries are struggling to pay back their own money, the interest on their own money, which they borrow because they put their cash in banks in the global, and they borrow this money from banks in the global. So you borrow your own money, and you end up not being able to pay back, not even the interest. And so we need to examine this kind of economic relationships so as to remove the inequities that are there. And then the issue of, there are quite a few that 8 key point demands in the manifesto. So I'll skip a couple of them. I've mentioned green colonialism, which is a very interesting concept. We really need to look at that because even with regard to renewable energy, that would play out very well through land grabbing and just producing the energy in the global south and shipping it to the north. For example, if you look at Nigeria's energy transition plan, talks makes a beautiful statement about distributed renewable energy, which is what the manifesto promotes also. But it also says there should be centralized renewable energy production for the production of for the storage, production and storage of hydrogen. That's where the plan stops. And that raises a red flag. What are you storing the hydrogen for? Certainly for export. But a plan for pipelines that will go from Nigeria to Morocco, from there to Europe. Over 85% of investment in energy infrastructure in Africa is designed for exports. And so that is very clear that, the plan goes on in the wrong direction. And then before I pause, let me see the other point that the manifesto demands very strongly is the defense of human rights defenders, of earth defenders. It's a big challenge. Global Witness has been very good at documenting how many earth defenders get killed every year, and it's getting more serious. 2 days ago, I woke up to a short message from home reminding me of what happened on 28 May 1998, when young people, after being tired of demanding for a compensation with Chevron, the oil company, took boats and went to an offshore platform to have a compensation with oil workers there. But before they got there, the military shot from them from helicopters and killed a number of our friends. Now, 2 days ago, a similar thing in play. Some youth went to, after being demanding for discussion for the agreement they had with the oil company about social issues, economic issues, and getting no response, they took up real direct action, peaceful direct action. Some boats went to an offshore platform, and again the military shot and killed one person on the spot, and 3 are still missing as we speak. Of course, the mother killed, drowned in the sea. And so we want the human rights defenders, the environmental defenders to be protected. And we have to do this consciously campaign on this and speak very loudly on this. And we require this. One of the beauty of our meeting today is that we could share a story like this, and we hope that you can call out the corporations who are fueling this kind of violence against harmless, loving, peaceful people.
Thank you so much, Liliana and Nemo, for sharing with us like some of the key elements of the manifesto. We're going to be, of course, sending you the manifesto for you to go through it and in more detail. But I am going to ask you, Asad, if that's okay, how this manifesto dialogues with some of the initiatives that have come from the Global South around the Global Green New Deal and, similar initiatives. Because I've heard you and Gordon Wants and organizations, some in the UK, to talk about similar things. And I just want to know, like, how the dialogue is kind of like happening between the global, some organizations in the global north at least, and initiatives like the PAC.
Thank you, Tatiana. I think we all know, as you were saying, we're in a moment of multiple crises, but it's a fundamental crisis in the system. And for many of us who've been in this movement We know what people were just trying to decide back in, the ultra globalization movement in the 1990s. We recognized then that the crisis was profound, that building power was critical, but building power required a vision and it required demands on what we couldn't do was, of course, replicate the same structural injustices from the global north to the global south. And so shifting the climate movement was always a key goal for us. And thankfully it has moved a lot from the polar bears on icebergs and it's all about plastic straws to a deeper understanding that the climate crisis is a crisis of an exceptional crisis of the system. But the narrative still, I think for large parts of the climate movement, particularly the global, was of course moving from empty calls for act on climate to end fossil fuels, and then to, well, we just need 100% renewable energy. And of course, whilst there have been some real positive steps like the climate movement to recognise that you cannot win the social license, we're now recognising that we need to be building, tackling economic injustices. Those tended to be only thought about in the global north. It was about union jobs for workers in the global north. It was about transition for communities in the global north. So what was really important was how does our movements see this moment as being a moment of common struggle with around a common vision that wasn't about just transition in the global north. We saw that with the Green New Deal. Some great ideas in the Green New Deals in the US and the various situations, but all of them were in the nation state. None of them recognised what the relationship, particularly between the extractive nature of the north to the south was. And even questions as simple as, if you want to transition in the global south, how do countries in the global south able to do that? You probably saw the figures recently from 1960 just to this 2018, $152 trillion of wealth that has been extracted from the global south to the global north. How do you say to the global south where half of 3.3 billion people don't have access to electricity or clean cooking, that's the answer. The answer is you're locked into energy poverty. So how do we build more profound visions between the real struggle as we see with the cost of living crisis, with people struggling to pay and energy bills in this country, that it's not simply about either reducing the energy bills or changing what was material of the energy, right, from fossil fuels to renewables. It requires a much more profound understanding of what kind of society and economy we want. What is productive energy? Should energy be a public good? How much energy are we willing to produce and for what? And by who? And owned by who? And so that kind of conversation between for a want, our part in the movements and our networks created this idea of what we needed was a radical global Green New Deal that was able to shift the global movements to recognise that it wasn't just climate, it was crisis of inequality, that we had to recognise that the planetary limits and our ecosystems, but also recognise that the world as it is now is being created by a logic of racialized capitalism and systems of injustice. And if we don't address those, the transition is going to be unfair. And as said, the word that centered on material transition, we said the answer is not going to be found in electric batteries. The answer is a much more profound question, for this energy transition. So where we are now, I think, is that weaving together of a movement to movement approach, weaving together these different realities, but recognizing that there is a commonality over the last 500 years, a commonality over the last 200 years particularly, and what is being put forward, what is being discussed and debated by the European Union, by the UK government, which is, how do we see more resources? How do we extract more resources from the global south? Even though we know the huge environmental and planetary damage that is being taken. So how do we change that? That requires a profound change in our imaginations, our visions, but it also requires a much more profound conversation. How do we build power behind them? What kind of movement do we need that is able to deliver that?
Thanks so much for that, Asa. And so in the spirit of kind of weaving and understanding if the how we are able to collectively build towards that profound transformation that we're talking about, and how we're able to meet people where they are and exchange from a point of difference. I'm really curious to hear from Nemo and Lily actually, given that you spent the week meeting parliamentarians, different NGOs, different actors within civil society. What are some of the lessons? What are some of the learnings? What are some of the openings that you think you see both as first steps or important principal openings that can lead towards new transformation, deeper work? Yeah.
You know, many of us, it's just that we are not maybe the voice section, the way we approach problems in society, we are always focusing on different spots. Biodiversity, climate change, women rights, and diversity, diversity in many ways, social justice, movement, etc. And even the way we saw our states, or I mean, different ways we have created over to attain those different spots. They are also divided. Food is in a office, women rights is in another one, etc. So what we are trying to, or we've been trying to do for many years, is trying to see that complexity and trying to find links between the different spots. So we already, we are, I cannot say that I'm just fighting for transitions because I'm always an eco-feminist. I'm fighting for biodiversity. I also fight for climate justice. Even we have different organizations. We have the platform, Latin American, the Caribbean platform for climate justice there that we met last week, and it was a very nice meeting also. And of course, we have different spaces where sometimes we are the same, sometimes there's always new people, youth, etc. But we are having those debates for years. And we see, you know, people, I mean, there, those spaces where decisions are taken, they see as, I mean, we are just dealing how to say, to send a message that we are at home. Even in Latin America, one of the main debates we have is nature's rights. So we say it's environmental rights and nature's rights. The rights of the river, the turtle, in fact, in Panama, they are here in Europe. I know you have no case of nature's right of recognition. So we are saying, if you are just trying us to see each other apart from each other, I mean, we are just a complexity, a diversity, and we really want this foreign name united. We want to keep united our spirits. For example, for our sisters in Argentina, Mapuche's women, they have this terricide in order to name the ecocide. And they say it's not just environmental impact, it's not environmental violence, but violence against women, violence against sexual identity, violence against our spiritual rights to have sacred sites. This river, this mountain, it represents more than just resources and services and natural. So we are trying to watch that complexity. Of course, we sometimes we try to focus on some spots in order to advance in our strategy, but we are really in the back. So when we know discussions and the different spaces we have opened during all these 3 years, we are trying to see this as a complexity. One of the things we are saying in the manifesto is that the world is so, as Breno Brinca, he couldn't come here today, he says so sorry, but he has to take a plane to come back home. But he talks about the decarbonization consensus. He says everybody agrees that we have to decarbonize each other. So we're so focused on emissions and counting and counting and counting that we don't realize how the assets are related to that, those emissions. They just sit behind, that they are produced in the middle of the dams, etc. The same logic. So we tend to decarbonize our discussions the much we can, really. And because of course it is important. Decarbonization is very important for our transition, but it's not the only thing. And they are keeping us talking about these and these and these everywhere, every time talking about that. And we don't have the time to sit, watch the trees and say, it's possible that that tree that absorbs carbon, it's the same as the emission in, let's say, in the oil territory, campo petrolero, I have to say, oil field. Is it the same that these could be a compensation for that there? Of course not. It's a lie. We are focusing in counting something that has no sense at all. Biocarbon is not the same as the emissions they are producing because those emissions are based on bodies, lives, interconnection, history, spiritual capital we have as humanity. Many think that we cannot count even. There's no possibility that we can put that in a number. It goes beyond. So this is something we are trying to discuss seriously, even with the MPs, in the way we can. And we just see how we can say that. But for sure, I think we are, I think with COVID, it was so evident that we are so connected to nature that we have to fight for nature side also. And not only for our trying to a healthy environment, but so anthropocentric. So we are saying we are not the center of the world and we want it to change in a way. So maybe it's so radical in many senses, but I think these are times for being radical, really. And we are not going to negotiate that. Really, we don't want to. Let's yes.
Just take it serious. All right. Thank you so much. The past 3 days have been very hectic days. I don't think I've done any job as difficult as these past 3 days, except with fighting the military in Nigeria. It was really one of the big lessons for me in 3 days. And the good thing is that we did work on the manifesto together from different continents, but here we were together physically. Some of us were meeting for the first time.
yes.
And over the past 3 days, we've become great friends. And I believe that the struggle is made up of friendships. Solidarity is really when we're working together, struggling together. And that's what gives us strength. So I'm going to go home strengthened by the new friendships, the times of laughter, the food we share, the hopes, the failures, and everything. And then meeting with the MPs and meeting with NGOs and think tanks was also the big side of the experience. There were some, we all like to have dialogues. But you found that you meet some people and it's going to be one way. After you do all the talking, and then at the end is thank you, or check it, or you say very little, no response to what has been put on the table. Or the other way around, when you say all these things, you sit down before somebody says a lot of things, cannot really address any of the questions that we have. But I think the most interesting place was the European Parliament. I think the UK is no longer there. But let's not talk about that. But I think we'll be interested anyway. Yeah, so we were talking mostly with the left leading politicians. But even though they were all left from the left, there were remarkable differences. And that was a big lesson for us. But again, it depends on it doesn't matter what level anybody does, it depends on the depth of conviction and where the person is coming from. Because some people will just be opportunities and get into certain places. But you know, we were able to do real conversations, get real analysis with some of the politicians. And we could see how careful politicians are for two things. One, about the next voting cycle, and secondly, about their colleagues in the parliament. And I think also the way they interpret what is happening with the public. Most of them believe that Europeans don't want to change their way of living. They don't want to change the standard imposed of living. And they have to just tweak things a little bit, not no serious changes. I mean, if I were to be a politician and have that kind of feeling, I think I would just quit. Why would I waste my time? And I don't want to just not serious changes, even though I know things should be changed, just because I want to make people happy. A million people can be wrong when two people are right. And I mean, I'm not saying anybody should impose their positions, but it was really very frustrating to see how careful politicians are, how unwilling. They didn't say it's really for the body language, for what is not being said. You could hear that they are not really ready to make any dramatic change. They don't want to confront the corporations who are calling the shots. In fact, one of the meetings we had in the parliament, as soon as we finished, there were another set of the corporate sector came in on road their banners about selling kind of something. They want to go selling or something. Line out the food and the drinks and everything, and the atmosphere transformed again. So I would say it was, well, we go back with a lot of learnings, for sure. And it's going to also help us in dealing with politicians back home, because we know that there's much difference. Whether in the global south and global north, they appear to approach life and policies and minor changes, corporate influence, welcome, and an eye on what the next vote is going to be. And we're doing quite a lot of votes as well, but they're rushing to go vote for forest, something on forest. Yeah, something about. Yeah.
I wrote it down. So many things.
Okay.
In fact, really.
I think the important thing to us for the things that were very important, and we still could understand. Supply chain, forest supply chain.
Yeah, the forestation supply chain.
Yes, that's what they were putting on. And a certain level of voting, the process was going on.
Yeah.
And I think what I just want to conclude into this question is say that perhaps the most, I mean, yesterday was fabulous. The meeting we had yesterday was great. Because you see that there was a joining of hands. But apart from that, to me, the most significant meeting, there were some highlights with the politicians, but the most significant meeting was with the youth at Ghent, was just outside of Brussels. And they were really to see that they're truly worried about the future. And that to me made a lot of sense, but the future belongs to them. And and they have to just see themselves 40 years, 50 years down the road, and I don't know what they see. And they were feeling very, very troubled. And I think that's a job for you guys to find it, to keep the fire burning in young people. Young people give up, we're finished. You old people have given up. Young people have not given up. So that to me is one key lesson. I'll go back home, invest my life in young people, and get them really angry.
Thank you, Nino. Thank you, Lillian. Yeah, actually, that last question is what I also want to ask Kat, and it's there are people in this room that work on different aspects of climate policy, trade policy, on economic policy, and who are having this inflating experience that Nemo was describing day in and day out with politicians in the UK. Nemo points to the youth as a source of fire, as a source of hope, as a source of sense making for how we build power. I want to ask you guys that, what are the ways in which we need to also in the global north, in the UK, build power so that when we are, as Lily said, entering these spaces of negotiation, we can leverage that power more effectively. So that's a very difficult question, right? Lessons.
I would start by just when you were speaking, I remember the closing press conference of the IPCC when it launched its sixth report. The closing words were, "Change is now inevitable. The world will look very different in 10 years' time, and it will look very different in 20 years' time. The only question is what kind of change." And that, I think, has got to be our starting point, right? So we know change is coming. What kind of change? And for us in the global north, I think we can reflect back. We can look back and say, okay, largely the global north movements for very understandable reasons. Austerity forced most movements to think internally into the nation state and forget internationalism. Even forget the idea of solidarity. And this, when we see what the crisis we face, requires us to rebuild solidarity and rebuild internationalism. Now, there were moments, right? Some of you probably remember, when the Gilets jaunes, the yellow vests, had their protest in France against the carbon tax. They had a banner at the front of the march. I've always think every environmentalist should have a picture of that, put it up on their desk. Said the elites worry about the end of the world. We ordinary people worry about the end of the world. And that has always been the challenge. How do you connect the material reality of people, now increasingly in the global north, who are now facing the same structural adjustment policies that the global south is facing, right? In terms of the welfare state, being regulated, labour economy, zero-hour contracts, everything that's happened in the global south is now happening in terms of the global north. But there are moments where, that relationship can change and can become profound. So in the recent pension protests in France, there were moments where actually the environmental and climate justice movements and the labour movement were standing side by side with similar demands about actually what we want about water is the right to water, should be about public control of the commons. And we see that increasingly here, right? Is the answer when we think about this crisis of, an green industrial strategy, which is about, 1 million new electric cars, or should it be about, free public transport? Is it about simply cutting any, North Sea oil, or is it a fight about that our homes should have retrofit of warm homes? There is an opportunity, and I think that this is moments of huge opportunity. And what we do know, and again, not to call, Antonio Guterres, so not revolutionary, not the left, not radicals. He said earlier in the year, he said, when you look back at he said the last 10 years, but you could say the last 30 years of so-called climate activism and diplomacy. So the one lesson is incremental climate action has failed. Siloed action has failed. What we need is a much more radical and fighting something. This is the Secretary General of the UN saying this, right? Not radical saying. Anybody looking at the scale of the crisis, the time frame that we've got, you know that this tinkering around the edges is not enough now. We need something much more profound. And I think there's a sense actually that even in the global north, people understand that, right? We saw it during the COVID pandemic, right? There were moments in the pandemic where people realized what were actually important: community, nature, access to space, but also realize what were the inequities in our society that forced the poorest to be more vulnerable, frontline staff not to be recognized, all of these things. So I think it's part now, there's a moment of a different conversation. But I think you've also got to really understand the reality of what we're facing. And I think for a long time, probably mainstream environmentalism, mainstream NGOs have thought that what their relationship with like people in power, MPs, MEPs, and politicians is one where everybody's those people, they're all trying to do the same thing. Maybe we have slight differences. Actually, that's just not true. When you listen to the Commissioner of the European Union a couple of months ago, and I think he summed it up, he said, Europe is a garden. Outside of the garden is the jungle. Our job is to stop the jungle from coming into the garden. Right? This is what the far right have said, right? But this is clear. You look at now what the UK's strategy is in terms of its industrial strategy. It's all about, how are we going to be the dominant green industrial power? Are we going to be able to sell these things to the rest of the world? Who's going to access on all the resources, those green minerals and metals and extraction? It's not just those, but the metals and the iron ore. Well, we know because it's 100 companies based in the City of London. It's who we are facilitating. We know what the actual goal is, and we saw it during the COVID pandemic. We wanted a way of looking, and we were just talking about this outside, right? If you want to see how the dominant forces are responding to global crisis, the pandemic is a perfect example. You have a global pandemic. The G7 leaders stand here in the UK, said no one is safe until everyone's safe. Then competed with the global side of PPE equipment. We bought 4 times more PPE equipment than we needed and didn't allow anybody in the global side to have PPE equipment. Then public money is invested into creating a vaccine. Global South says, great, vaccine. Nobody's safe until we're all safe. We all have to eradicate this virus, right? We said, no, absolutely not. The pharmaceutical companies are going to have intellectual property rights. We're going to sell these vaccines to you. The pharmaceutical companies were making $2 million a day, right, on that. We make billionaires out of them. And millions of needless deaths in the global south. And to this day, continuing to do that. And so when I look at those conversations about green minerals and metals, we know what they're not going to be lifting the intellectual property rights of those technologies that are needed for the transition in the global south. We are going to have a transition, but the transition of the north on the back of the south, unless there's something much more profound. And I think this is part of this conversation of why it's so important the ecosocial pact and all of the global south movements actually start to do a wake-up call to the global north movements, saying what you are calling for actually is tinkering around the edges. We need you to be with us in a much more profound vision and fight, because if we don't fight, we already lost. And one of the problems I think has been in the global north, as we know, is neoliberalism has taken away people's imagination, taken away our ability to be able to think. If you say to people, envision a better future, say, oh no, the market's always been here, the market will always be there, capitalism will, no, we construct it. So it's a created system. It's created, it can be destroyed, and it can be replaced. If we don't believe that, we don't believe in the vision that we want people to guide to, how will anybody else follow us? And I think that's been one of our problems. people genuinely don't believe that there is an alternative. You know, and Liliana was asking about East London, about where we are. And I was saying, this is an area of intense political struggle where we transformed this area from one where the far right were controlling the streets and we were dying in risks for murders. All these moments where people think nothing can change until struggle makes things change. So for me, I think the policy is not where the fight is. The fight is about building power in our movements, and building the movements requires us to have the right policies and vision. But without power, it's just another piece of paper.
Right, so just a couple more questions to wrap up this part before we go into a little break and we come back for a Q&A with you all. The manifesto is a collective effort between the global tapestry of alternatives, the ecosocial pact of the South, Health of Mother Earth Foundation, the Institute for Policy Studies. So it's a mixture of social movements, of networks, of collectives, of NGOs. And I want to ask Lily and Nemo, kind of building on what Hassan said about the ways in which power is being built and in which our movements are building hope through power, through other ways of relating to each other, relating to nature, of honoring wisdom, indigenous wisdom, ancestral wisdom, and building new or perhaps novel ways of describing the moment and the transition. So new language, new meanings. I want to ask you both, what are some of the ways in which you find right now in Africa, in Latin America, power is being built effectively? And also think about it in terms of lessons that you can offer here, questions that you can offer here, and challenges that you can offer here to a small part of the UK climate justice. I'm going to make Nemo go back. Well, I'll ask Nemo if you would like to go.
You are an expert at asking complex questions. I don't know where to start from to answer. My goodness, yes. Well, I think I start saying also, where do I need to add any comment? But yes, I think the beginning point is the correct reading of the context that we're living in, a correct reading of the power relation, and understanding that nobody gives you freedom on a platter of gold, that they have to struggle. Yes, so interrogating the dominant concepts and ideas and finding out what is the thing that's behind the thing that's behind the thing that's behind the thing. Just doing that uncovers a whole lot of the things that we're struggling against. And if we don't do that, we are bound to live through the same cycle of crisis over and over again. For me, one of the key things that I've noticed, I thought it was a brilliant idea coming out from an organization, but then I found that many people are already doing it. That's one thing, to recognize that what you think is new or only known by you is actually being already practicalized by others. We came up with we said from this year going forward, we want to work on healing our territories, healing our communities, getting individuals healed, because people have been so disconnected from nature that they literally lost their mind. Because our memory is tied to nature. Our memory is deeply connected to who we are. And many of the forces of oppression in the world today want to subvert that understanding about who we are, where we stand, where we're coming from, where we're going. They want to paint a picture of the past that is convenient, and also paint a picture of the future that they will profit from. And we really need to wake ourselves up from this false dream, so that we understand what are the cycles of oppression, of wickedness, and also see clearly where we can go in the future, where we relate, build relationships, number one, repair lost connection, and understand that our relatives are not only those on two legs, those on four legs, those on a million legs, they are all our relatives. And we need to really understand that. I think it takes a lot of humility to understand that we are not on this planet alone. My young people in the organization that I lead wrote a collection of stories about climate impact on the animal kingdom, how climate change is affecting animals. Fiction, animals talking to the trees, even the air speaking. And I found it very profound and really got to think that we seldom think about the direct impact of other beings or the kind of things we do. So in terms of how to change power dynamics, I think we need to awaken the power in us and then realize that the power is also out of us. And then build the right connection to understand how to harness these various levels of power. And then multiply this in movement. We're just staying together. We had a retreat, and I found the most profound part of the retreat was just hugging one another. You know, this evening was it afternoon or evening? 6 o'clock, between 5 and 6. And we're sitting out there and having a conversation. And I found it very interesting. In the open, we sit there in the open, the air is cool, we're talking, we're connecting, we could hear each other, we could hear what we say and what we're not saying. And I think learning to hear things that people are unwilling to say is a skill that we've lost. And that's why we don't hear the trees, but they don't speak our language. Learn to listen and hear. I believe we're going to reconfigure power relations, because before the politician tells a lie, we will already know that's a lie. But because people don't hear, we have crowds following very healthy politicians. They might should just speak and people are acting on what they say without listening to what they're not saying. And what they say is all about themselves and not about the collective, not about the people that are talking to. And I think it's going to take a lot of, not really introspection, but questioning what is everything that's going around us and construct. We have to build, construct, we have to really work hard at dreaming and building the future. I mean, I like that. That must be that's a landmark point. Stay with us. And I've been looking at it and I think, well, I don't know where it came from. I'd like to know the history. And I've not read enough books. But still, we must, of course, we're going to the future. Say, change is coming. Are we going to stay in one place or are we going to move to see the future, to take the future, be a part of the future, to bring about the change of one? I think a lot of the work we're going to do is about just speaking to ourselves and telling our story. Because when you lose the imagination, lost everything. So this is one thing I'm doing.
I've said so many times, where is our power itself? Where is our power? Where is it? How we can show our power in those meetings with the right from these people that maybe things they don't want to hear. Maybe it was so close to listen to what we were saying, like, people, we know that no matter what we are going to do. So it was a moment that I asked her, Maristela, so should we burn the mood? Or ask for them? They are just put it in such a position as, okay, what are we going to do? And of course, it depends on the meeting, depending on the meeting. Sometimes we wanted to burn that topic, so that we need to bring it up in a way, constructive way, bring the constructive way. And we wanted to, and so but there were many open doors and windows and hearts, for sure. Worried, they are very worried. Many people we talked to, they are really worried about what is coming because extractivism now is at home in a way. Critical raw materials are opening doors in Europe for extractivism next year. Special economic zones are going to be installed here also in the UK. I mean, the situation is that things we are facing there, you're going to be facing them also here. And even worse, there for us. So that's not a very optimistic message, but I think it's good to see what is the intention of people, so we know that maybe how we are going to move and how we are going to act. So when we're asking where's our power, what do we have that could be powerful to show that they have to stay? Well, I think dignity was something for sure that was coming to our mind many occasions. I would say we're calling for that recognition. No matter what, doesn't matter if you don't want to listen to that, we are asking and demanding that. So never stop demanding what you think. Never stop being coherent to what you think and try to act according to that. That's something I learned from you in this trip. And we are we are decided to keep doing that, demanding, writing, dancing, doing whatever, and the way we know how to do it in our spaces with our people, but also they are allowing them to take that, that sensation that we believe in each other, we trust each other. So that's something which is, and we were asked also during the trip, what's hope? How do you keep hope, for example? And we were like, well, diversity, political diversity, social political diversity, biological diversity, sexual diversity, all diversity are important for keeping hope. Because just recognizing others and listening to others is the way that maybe we keep hope in our hearts. I mean, sometimes I don't understand many of my indigenous sisters in many ways, but we listen to each other, try to understand each other, and that's just an example. But in many other, there are many other examples. So even when we were there with so different people, with different goals, we were listening to them also, and we appreciate they were listening to us also. There were many open windows and doors we are going to explore for sure to see how we can have incidents. And of course, we let you know how we are going to follow up with this manifesto very soon. We have some important campaigns there for Global South in Africa, in Pacific, and Venezuela, and Colombia, and Argentina. We are having many ideas and hope and happiness. Happiness is something, I think that's our power, happiness. We are very happy to be all united, as this forum says. And this is something we are taking from this beautiful space we opened during this encounter, that we are happy to have each other, for sure. And that is it.
Thank you so much, Lily. What a beautiful note to end on, an invitation to recognize our diversity, to tell tell our story, to dance together, to see each other. Yeah, I think we're gonna end this particular bit of the conversation. Thank you so much, Hassan, Lily, and Nemo. We're gonna have a short break. So I hope you managed to have a break, and those of you who wanted to drink to get one. And what I'm most grateful for is that you came back. And hopefully the conversation, the drinks, either inspired you to ask the questions that you were thinking about asking, or if not, giving you new questions that you would like to ask. And so, I think that's a really nice. I'm just going to invite you to ask some questions. Sure.
Yes, if you want to read the manifesto, you can go to the different pages of the organization about ecosocial. And you can find it. But if you want to listen to it, you can go to Serpentine Gallery. There are some such nice installation with some bicycles, and while you're pedaling the bicycles, you can listen to the manifesto in English. It's so beautiful. It's called an exposition from Thomas Alcantara. And also you can watch the documentary about his process being one of an affected community in Jujuy. And there is also part of the BAFLF participating in this documentary. Yeah, there is also a nice way of approaching the document also, and to visit this installation, which is really, I think, original, and it has it's very it's beautiful, really. I really recommend you to go there and read the manifesto and watch Thomas' work.
Maybe we can share information about the exhibition and manifesto as well.
Your point.
Oh, right, yeah. Yeah, okay. So, Andy, maybe we'll take a few questions. But also, maybe in the spirit of dialogue as well, one of qualify a question or offer some context that will make or add a reflection piece, feel free to do so.
Yes, thanks for the talks. I think I'll put my question first and then explain. And at the end, the question is a big question. Which the manifesto advocates an ecosocial transition. What socially just, low carbon alternative can undermine the dominances and replace the dominances through transition? And I explain that in two levels. One is, a few years ago, we were all demanding and hoping that major industrialized countries would reduce that process. Now, here's the future is the reverse. They're all going to increase extraction and use of fossil fuels for several reasons. And the Ukraine war is given some kind of an excuse, but that's not the main reason. No, it's because fossil fuels will always be more profitable than renewable energy, even though it may be cheaper. And because energy usage as a whole is increasing and will increase indefinitely for the future. And that comes from the capitalist system in a sense. So that's the future that will happen unless somehow we, some version of we, stop it. And nobody seems to know how we can stop that future. The indefinite increase of fossil fuels. And of course, this is justified ideologically through all sorts of false solutions about supposedly decarbonizing fossil fuels or compensating for fossil fuels, carbon offsets, and so on. In your manifesto, I haven't read it, but rightly denounces all these false solutions. But the false solutions have been very effective ideologically in anesthetizing people. The fact that somehow there can be a green future led by the current policy and industrial elites. So how can we undermine that future? Which will happen unless we stop it. And what kind of alternatives can somehow be linked together through a political force, and by what political force can use and expand those alternatives to undermine the dominant agenda? And that's the big question that I see. We can't have a full answer to the question until we try strategies. Right? But we can try to indicate some pathways and strategies to achieve that aim. So, we discuss.
Wait, thank you. We got that yet. Maybe we'll take a couple more.
I think you was basically do it. I think. No, yeah, no. Sorry.
Any more?
Hi, so thank you so much for all your insight earlier. We talked a lot in the break about narratives and connection on these issues. So there's to me, sort of two connected strands here. One of them is about like how in the global north there's this huge status quo bias and lack of imagination about, or there's a belief things can change, and the framing of how things should change is around decarbonizing the status quo, rather than any idea about like how we fundamentally change the organization, our society, our lives. And then there's this other strand about internationalism, and like we know there's historical precedent for international solidarity, there's the labor movement, and across issues, somebody will be able to fill me in for those, you know, UK textile workers striking in solidarity with something to do with the end of the slavery. My memory failing me, but you know, the point is that the precedent's there, but it's not kind of everything. So the question is about how do we, and I feel like people have a deep sense that there is a problem with the system as it stands, but they still have this kind of hard shell of status quo bias. It's like they can't be open. So we'll just stick with how things are and try and so how do you break through that, and how do you rebuild international solidarity in ways we know it's just hopefully that makes sense. Sure.
Is there one more? These are pretty good questions. I mean, great questions. Go ahead.
Cheers. Yeah, mine's comparatively simple. So it just was touched on a bit already into the question of movement building. Was in practical terms, I'd love to hear from each of the panelists if you have one thing that you would suggest that each of us do when we leave here to build our own success. I think that's probably front and center of our minds and our chests. All of us in here when we come to something like this, and we just yearn for the numbers to be bigger. That's not reflection whatsoever in the organizers. It's always the way in something as well. But what's one practical thing we can do to build our numbers? I think just to hear your thoughts. Thanks.
Amazing. So alternatives to breaking free of the dominant system, how we connect them up.
Maybe it can be very short.
Yeah, I think so.
To start with.
Me think transition is not a problematic term because it puts everything on the future. It means somewhere you are going to, a place you are willing to arrive. You're reaching some French, and that's this, yes. And putting that much simply, it's not that we are not thinking about the future, but there's a need of amplifying our present perspective. It means looking around, watching what is others doing, how they're doing, and in which way it could reach my own practices and what you're doing and what you're doing. So maybe, and especially with them, it's so difficult to have time for doing that, that we also have to think about time and giving yourself, ourselves time for watching each other in such a way, constructive way, because when we, and this is a we, because we have discussed this in the past, we believe that alternative real solutions are happening right now. It's not something you're going to build, it's not something you're going to do. It's not something from the future that is coming, it's happening. And different ways of relating to energy, to water, to soil, to produce food, etc. It doesn't mean that we're going to live like them, but they have something to tell us. We think, and this is something which is proposed in the manifesto, but also is part of our demand theory, that we cannot have a transition without consumption. And whatever you do, but we need less energy as hegemonic energy concept. We need less energy demand. That's for sure. There's not enough lithium or any weird and rare earth and whatever that we are coming that they only tells you that is weight. There's no enough for that consumption. It's scientifically studied. It's a lie that we are going by renewable energies, we are going to have a transition just by technology. So not that's technology because of technology. No. What is it for? Who is being benefited? Are those projects for community use and for social life? This what we have seen in Latin America, for example, is that all those renewable projects are going to the industry, for corporation, for, I mean, it's not for communities. They are changing soil use and just giving opportunity to have economical or productive activity because soil use change. And then that energy is not even for the community. That's why we call them small solutions that way. But on the other hand, we have experienced in Colombia that some people, well, not only in Colombia, but Argentina and so many other places, that by energetic communities, taking energy with in a more relational way of approaching it, they have a more effective use of energy. So maybe there's something that we should and of course we cannot decide on those huge projects, Maya or the different wind parks that are building there. No, of course we cannot, but we can also maybe try to write to show to give a space to all those voices and ways of living. Because it's not a matter of future, it's a matter of amplifying the present and watching each other a little bit, just dialogue, establishing dialogues, here and now dialogues. And I think the GTA, Global Tapestry of Alternatives, is working towards that direction, but also here in nicely and Pacto, we're working on with many people building alternatives there. Just of course, it is a different economy, an economy for sustainability, applying for sostenimiento de la vida. The sustainability doesn't give so much credit to sustaining life or living life or something like that, but it has to do how do you keep things alive. And for an economy based on life, for sure, profit is not the main thing at the center. So, but of course, we need transition, an economical proposal also. And for countries, it's going to take I don't know if that's the scale we, where a transition, just transition for people is possible, but we are trying to write, to give voice to all those alternatives down the present that are trying to construct this transition.
I saw the button on the table as stop greed. No, greed kills. Greed kills. I believe you all have one copy of this out on that table. In my pocket because it is very clear that it talks about, it actually captures what is one of the key problems in the world. The fossil fuel trade ought to have ended a long time ago. Well, being kept alive because of greed. Because the corporation, oil companies have so much, I mean, they've captured the imagination of the world. And this is the cheapest form of energy. Whereas it's cheap because the true cost not being paid. The oil in Uganda will last for 25 years, 25 to 30 years maximum, then it's exhausted. But the harm that would have been accumulated in that time would take many lifetimes to repair. But nobody's paid for that. In Niger Delta, in one of the states in Niger Delta, Nigeria, a new report that just been issued shows that per capita pollution is 1.5, 1.5 barrels of crude oil per capita. Whether you're a baby or an old person. The pollution, not the benefit. And the water bodies have been polluted 1 million times with hydrocarbons, 1 million times above safe standards, safe limits. I mean, when you imagine that this is not history, this is something that's ongoing, and then people are buying petrol, all the products, and say it's cheap, it's not cheap at all. It's blood. How do I put it? People are dying from human blood. People are suffering because of this, and nobody's paying the cost. It's the true cost of fossil fuels being paid. It will be one of the most expensive energy forms, and so we need to escalate this information, this kind of understanding, so that we do know that it is not right. It's not true to say that it's very efficient. And it's actually, as in my country, if the cost of food was truly being paid, the country would have been broke a long time ago, because the money ends up cannot clean up the environment. United Nations Environment Program issued a report about pollution of Ogoni in 2011. At that time, some places had hydrocarbon up to polluting the soil to a depth of 5 meters. By 2 years ago, when some of those places were excavated, the pollution had gone down 10 meters. 10 meters. So every single day is getting deeper. And the latest report that was published by the Environment and Oil Commission of Bayelsa State, the Niger Delta, is about pollution that is ongoing and nobody's done anything about it. And yet Shell, Chevron, ExxonMobil are selling off their rotten assets and moving offshore or leaving the country. But they are not ready to take responsibility for what they have done over 6.5 decades. There's an oil well that blew up in April 2020. As we speak, it's still burning. For more than 2 years, burning, spilling, 10 kilometers offshore. You can see it from the shoreline. Fisher folks can't go near that area anymore. That was an area in the different species that they built their livelihoods. But these are stories that nobody's reporting. We talk about them, we just ignore it. It's not. But this kind of silent conspiracy of silence keeps the fossil fuel age on. But one thing is sure, one day is going to end, whether we are ready or not. It's going to end. Civilizations have come and gone. We have the pyramids, we have the cigarettes, we have all the monuments standing. We don't know who built them and why. So on them, we don't know who built them and why. The same thing will happen. One day, whoever succeeds us, whether they still look like us or not, they will see the aircraft, they will see the ship, they will see the skyscraper. They say, who made this? And unless we start to write the stories that they won't even know who we were. I can't understand that people probably willingly destroy themselves and attempted to destroy the future. So the question of decarbonizing the status quo is excellent. I like that phrase because it states both the problem and the injustice. You can't decarbonize the status quo. But that's what we're doing. Decarbonize the status quo. How stupid can we be? You keep polluting or decarbonizing. You don't want to change. Maintain the status quo. So we keep polluting, and then of course one tree in Colombia will absorb the equivalent of the carbon that shared this ability in Netherlands. This is it. I think we just need to break the veil that tell this. I mean, I don't know really what. Tell it as it is. Let's escalate this and try to share the common, make it a common understanding that the false solutions are truly false. You know, they call it engineering, climate engineering. I think this one makes it, but climate engineers, that they could fertilize the ocean to filter and get to capture carbon and then die and sink to the bottom of the ocean with the carbon. How brilliant can you get? Or you're going to put some lights in the sky to widen the clouds, or genetically engineer trees to bring out white leaves, to trigger the Armageddon effect and reflect all the solar radiation back into space. All these notions and so-called science, so-called engineering, is to invest in infrastructure that keeps the corporations in power, with influence and influence, without doing a damn thing to stop the climate crisis.
Okay.
So we just need to call a lie a lie. And that may help us. So what can we do to build a movement? Let's encourage the anger. Encourage this. What builds movement is this content. If you are content, you're not going to build a movement. Except maybe there's some kind of movement in contentment.
I suppose my starting point would be that there's no status quo. I mean, we think about the world as we're seeing now, you know, facing these multiple crises that we've seen, the scale of the killer floods, fires, famines, what's happening at just over 1 degree warming. We know that in 5 years we're going to reach 1.5 for the first time, maybe another 10, and we get into territory. But we see the scale of inequality, not just in the global south, but now increasingly in the global north. When we see that the very ecosystems in which humanity has survived, and the whole human civilization has been in a stable environment. What does that mean? Well, you heard the UN earlier this week, a few weeks ago, say we are now at the start of hunger pandemics. Right? Oh, the famine in the Sahel was called the first climate famine. The idea that this moment will stay the same, absolutely not. It's not. The question then, of course, you know, we have seen because of profit accumulation. I would say not simply profit accumulation, but also the concept of racialization. The idea that inbuilt within the economy, global economy, that there are places and people who can be sacrificed, or have always been sacrificed now become a permanent reality. But those sacrifices are now happening, as we've talked about, also in the global north, and that there is a possibility. So when we talk about demands, you know, as I said, I don't want to talk about less. Right? I think the environment movement should take that word off the table. We should talk about better. Right? The right of everybody to live with dignity. That's what we as people want. Live with dignity and harmony with others. What does that mean? In concrete terms, how do we know? Well, we know there are massive campaigns around the NHS in this country, right? So if we're fighting for an NHS here, why aren't we fighting for the global NHS? We fight for living wages here. Why aren't we fighting for living wages? Of course, if it's £15 an hour, why can't it be $15 a day in the global south? That requires us, of course, to tell a very different story, right? And it is, you're absolutely right, it is telling the story. Like during the American Civil War, you know, the merchants of Liverpool and Manchester came together and built a fucking warship to break the embargo of the southern colonies, right, to get cotton to Lancashire and Yorkshire. But the cotton famine that was taking place led destitute cotton workers refused to hand them cotton from the colonies, saying we are more in solidarity with the slaves than we have with the elites. And we know that this is solidarity. Just down the road here is Tate and Lyle, right? When people talk about slavery, anti-slavery movement in this country, the largest number of people who took part in the sugar boycott were people in the East End, working class people, who said we're going to stand in solidarity. The idea that, you know, that solidarity is somehow, you know, an abstract term. It's the most important word in the vocabulary of the working class. It's at the heart of the trade union movement. It's the heart of all social movements. We have to rebuild that. We have to remind people of what that solidarity looks like. So it's not about less here, but it's about yes to other places. And I think we can do that. Because if you look at the fact that now when we tell the story of the fact that these companies pollute Nigeria, devastate, well, people only need to turn on the television screen and see how our water companies are pumping fucking sewage into rivers and seas, and know that that's about profit accumulation. If they're doing that here, imagine what they're doing around that. How do we build those connections? How do we tell a different story about how we get to this place, and how do we get out of this moment? Now, the architect of neoliberalism, Milton Friedman, not a friend of all of ours, you know, he said something really profound, and I think we should all. He said, only a crisis, real or perceived, produces real change. So, and he was speaking to his acolytes, and he said, our job is to keep our ideas and policies alive until the politically impossible becomes the politically inevitable. And there is a question now, as we head towards the end of the crisis, is what we think is politically impossible suddenly becomes actually politically inevitable, because there's no way you can solve these crises within the current construct of our economic system. There's absolutely no way, no amount of math, geoengineering solutions. And of course, they're interesting, the geoengineers, because the geoengineers, those who want to put bloody mirrors into the sky and iron filings in the sea, they say, they actually have the analysis. They say profit accumulation, the power of corporations and the fossil fuel industry means that there can be no transition. That's why you're going to have to rely on us, because we're going to be the only game in town. Well, actually, there's another way, which has got to be about people's demands. That's why when you ask the question, what can we do? Right? Well, at Warren, we say, you know, we have to tell the truth about the scale of the crisis, how it's being impacted and joining the dots. Telling a different story, and then acting, providing opportunities for people to take action and demonstrate that action can take place. So when our comrades in Latin America are talking about, you know, the extractive industries, well, they're here. Our responsibility is, and I said this to XR on their first ever protest when we took Westminster Bridge. The bridge is not their problem. It's the City of London. If we're going to take action, we should be taking against corporations and the City of London. So let's target the financiers. Let's target those companies. And actually, let's try and build those connections. And there is a possibility. There is a real possibility when we talk about this moment of inequality and injustice in this country. You know, for the climate movement to stand with the labour movement, saying, actually, you know, the fight is about public services, right? The fight is about public transport. But we should go beyond talking about nationalised public railways. We should be talking about how do we have free public transport so that people can live safely. This area is talking about the highest, you know, sort of air pollution in the country. Why? Because it's always been the poorest working class area. That's why you have like motorways and roads and an airport and all the big industrial factories have always been based in this, because this is the sacrifice zone. There's a 10-year difference between the life expectancy of somebody who lives in this area and if you live over in West London in leafy bloody middle class areas. That is just in London itself. There's a story we can tell which galvanizes people. But it has to also have hope. There are ways in which we can tell very, very complex stories, but that connect with where people are. I think that ultimately is about going back to dignity. And it is reminding, it is telling the stories that the banners of our trade union movement don't say workers of England unite, they say workers of the world unite. And we have to remind the trade union movement that its power lies in international solidarity. So, you know, an amazing work is starting to happen now with the Amazon workers, connecting Amazon workers all across the world, with the garment workers. We've just had a trade union delegation go to Sri Lanka, connecting garment worker fights in Sri Lanka with garment workers in Leicester, saying it's the same company, the same exploitative, the same exploitation. That's how you build solidarity, not in abstract, just in words, but who are the companies? What are the struggles? How do you, it takes work. This solidarity isn't something that just happens by magic. You have to weave it together, be part of a movement, take action together. That's the first thing, and then tell other people to be able to do that. It's no good us sitting, what was it, Rebecca Solnit says, hope isn't like a lottery ticket with clubs sitting on the sofa. But, hope is the axe in which we smash through the door. And that's what we've got to do. We've got to act with that same urgency, with that same anger, but with a purpose. And that, whether it's from the ecosocial plan, the tapestry alternative, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to provide people with a framework that says there is hope, it can be done, but only if we build our collective power as a movement. That means transforming. The biggest thing we can do is transform the UK movement. What climate justice actually means, that it's not simply about loss and damage. It's not simply about people who are being the most affected. That also our responsibility. Fifth biggest economy in the world, fifth most responsible for climate pollution, sixth biggest consumer of resources in the world. Why? Yet the majority of people struggle in this country. It's not us. And a couple of months ago, there was a study just done on in the post-COVID, not even pre-COVID, just after COVID, for 99% of the world, we have every dollar that 99% of the world earned. The millionaires earn 2.3 million. The billionaires make 2 billion a day. 2 billion a day. There's a different story we can tell, which is about the elites, about the powerful, which isn't about telling working class people in this country that actually this transition is about, you being responsible. And I think getting away from that kind of narrative, that it's about how we are and it's our behavior. No, it's structural. We should have structural answers. We should build a collective movement to movement. So if there's nothing else, there's plenty of tipping point forum, there's lots of organizations that are trying to weave together, and of course the climate justice coalition.
Thank you.
Thank you, Asad. Thank you, Liliana. Thank you, Nemo, for this dialogue. Thank you, Nemo and Liliana, for the work that you did, or to be in dialogue with so many different people, with different beings, with different moments, with different rhythms, for taking the time to do that, for offering pathways, for offering challenges, for offering questions that we can take into the climate justice movement in the UK and sit with and think about as we move towards different moments, different spaces, different interventions that we know we need to carry out. So it's been such an honor to close your delegation. It's been such an honor to welcome you here to the UK, to our movement, to our community, and we really look forward to what may come in the future. So thank you all for joining us this evening.